Hey geeks, it's Minx, and I hope you have your tinfoil hats ready because it's time for the next X-Files review. It was episode 2, which aired the night after episode 1, so of course I'm doing this the next day. And it's kind of a continuation of the first episode. I know not every episode of the X-Files in the olden days was a direct continuation. A lot of the time, they ended up filling it in with Monster of the Week. But this one is very much connected. It might not seem that way through the entire episode, but they are dealing with pretty much the same uh, content. Um, but I will say it did feel more like a old episode of the X Files than the first one did. The first episode was kind of like the setup, the outline, the overlying context of what the arc is going to be over this mini-series limited run, so to speak. Um, this episode, they dealt more heavily in the suspicion that the government is using alien DNA to mess with people and give certain people powers and whatnot. Um, in fact, that also delved deeper into the fact that it's very likely the government is stealing people's babies and is, uh, cultivating them with the alien DNA. Um, so much so that they actually start discussing their child, the one that is shared between Mulder and Scully, and we get to learn more. We know that he was adopted in a private adoption, and that it was for his own good, his own safety. Um, but with the emphasis that was put on William in this episode makes me wonder if they aren't going to run into him at some point during this limited run. As Scully mentioned, he would have been 15 as of this episode, and that's a very tumultuous time for any young child. As of puberty, high school drama, and all that jazz. It was kind of interesting because individually, Scully and Mulder had almost like a dream or a vision or a daydream about what would have been like to have been there for William the entire time, to have raised him. Um, Scully's led through taking him to school, like the first day of school, um, picking him up after school, the first broken bone, and then quite terrifyingly, his frantic cries led her to go into his room and find that he had taken on a more physical appearance of an alien, which of course was freaky as shit. Excellent special effects on that, by the way. Um, Whereas Mulder's was, him teaching him about the apes and the monolith, sitting there doing the dad thing, watching movies, outside, shooting off rockets and talking about space. And then the way his ended was the typical person being abducted where they're levitating off the ground and all the bright lights, and that's how the kid, you know, disappears, and, it's freaky. And this is all while they're both staring at a little photo of him, which was kind of poignant. And like I said, the emphasis on William and the fact that William kept coming up, and also the fact that, Dana found, alien DNA mixed with her DNA, kind of makes you wonder if he will come back into the story. I'm betting yes, because that has always remained one of those unspoken things that's always kind of hung in the background in the show. So I'll be interested to see where that goes. All in all, the entire point of the episode was that the government is into some hairy shit that most likely involves taking, poor, unwed, poor mothers, pretty much taking their babies before they're typically before they're born. So essentially, snatching the fetuses. Typically, these are at some point in utero. Um, Alien DNA is looks like alien DNA is introduced to the child, um, which leads to some interesting things happen. This is all in the background. This is all the things that they're discovering as they're unraveling this mystery conspiracy. In the foreground is a company run by a doctor who, also supports the hospital that Scully works at. And they pretty much come down to he's the one who's been, actually doing the experiments. He runs this facility that has a bunch of kids who have genetic mutations that were awfully grotesque, and it made me feel incredibly sorry for those kids. And it was pretty apparent that there was some alien DNA involved, especially when they talked to this one young kid. His head looked like an alien head, and even Scully was kind of looking at this kid like, well then. Um, and you come to find out that he actually fucked with his own kids. He had his wife committed because they said that she tried to kill her unborn son. And then you also find out that she didn't. She actually figured out that he had been testing on their children because her 2-year-old, she discovered, could breathe perfectly fine underwater. And she was 9 months pregnant at the time. And so she decided to leave his ass. And he didn't like that. Well, as she was leaving, she ends up getting in a car wreck. And while she's laying there, she hears this piercing sound in her head. And she said it was the baby trying to communicate with her. So she cut open her belly and the baby crawled out. And you actually see her cut open the belly and the baby's hand, come out. Creepy as shit. Awesome, but creepy as shit. This is X-Files. Whoa. They brought it back, people. So fucking crazy. Well, the way this episode all started was this guy who happens to work at the company run by the doctor kills himself with a letter opener, jamming it through his ear to stop a loud, high-pitched noise that won't stop. So baby done grown up. He is now a teenager who's working as a janitor, trying to find his sister. He now knows that his mother's alive, who his mother is. So now he's trying to find his sister. Well, they end up catching him, bringing him to his dad, who takes a blood sample and then says, "Oh, I'll introduce you to Molly." Ends up pissing the kid off because he's like, "That ain't my sister." Ends up finding her. They start talking. She starts talking to him telepathically. So they know each other innately, in that weird primal kind of sense. And they end up busting out and subsequently exploding their dad's face. Pretty much. They didn't show the entire thing, but that's totally what happened. He pretty much used the high-pitched frequency to explode him, from the inside out, because, there's only so much that can happen when you just see blood just start gushing out of every orifice, including his eyeballs. There's also pretty much the confirmation that when Mulder, who consequently is the line of the episode, pretty much says, "I don't know, I blacked out when I saw his eyeballs explode out of his head." You can't unsee that. So that was really neat. The kids, of course, disappear. And all throughout this entire thing that's wound around is the other government agencies, namely the Department of Defense, trying to shut the entire thing down, trying to shut down the investigation by the FBI, because it's classified. It's all classified. Because it's, of course it is. It's the fucking government, and they don't want it getting out that they're fucking with people's genetic codes using alien DNA. So yeah, that's how they chose to come back to that topic after the first episode. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see if William comes back into the picture, or if he's just going to remain kind of that specter in the back of their lives. We did not see the smoking man in this episode. We did see a very frazzled Skinner, which is not unusual because him, he hates red tape and all those things. With that said, I give it an A-. It felt a lot more like old school X-Files, only with, updated graphics and the ability to be more graphic because, we have slightly looser standards on TV now than we did in the 90s. So that was cool, grotesque, and awesome. Um, I'm looking forward to the next episode. I want to see where this goes. I want to see what they discover next. It was also good to see that Mulder had shaved for this and shown up to the job in a suit. One thing I would like to say, I want to know how these two can join, unjoin, run away from the law, come back, run, come back. How they keep getting hired and fired from the FBI so many times. Like, I get that they're the only ones in their field, but you're telling me the FBI doesn't have anyone else working paranormal stuff except for two people? But, alas, suspension of disbelief. I love the show. I'm glad it's back. And it's kind of exciting to see it take on a similar form to how it was before. With that said, I'm looking forward to the next episode. And I hope you're looking forward to my next review. If so, please click that little red button down there that says subscribe on it. That helps me out a lot. Like this video, comment on it if you wish. I do respond to every comment that I can. And with that said, I'll see you next time. Later, geeks.